Happy Thursday.
We're back.
Does it feel good to be back?
It does. It feels nice.
Good, because it'd be real awkward if you said no. I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, no, this
Here we
couch
go
is
again.
getting shaped to my butt. Just in this one area. It's really comfy.
I think it's only natural to have a couch that just, catches you like you deserve to be caught.
Yeah, like on a cloud.
On a cloud.
A purple cloud floating through the sky. Ah.
Why is
That's
it
how
purple?
my butt. Well, because the clouds this morning were actually purple when I was driving in.
Nice.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. It's maybe the sort of benefit of waking up early, so I get to watch the weird colors of the sunrise.
Yeah.
And it's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just give us that daydream face that you have whenever you're?
I don't know what that.
Wait.
What is my daydream face?
Do it one more time for us. That was the daydream completion face.
Ta-da!
Well done.
I just completed.
Yes,
I
congratulations.
just dreamed all over the place.
Oh, well, happy Thursday.
Thanks.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's nice to get a little Ryder break,
Yeah, sometimes it's necessary. Yeah, and sometimes it's kind of forced on you by other things.
Yeah.
You're just, okay, I'm going to roll with this.
I'll
Yeah.
deal with my Ryder sacrifice.
Yeah, I'll deal with it.
And so just to catch up, you're here Monday, which I don't know how this week feels for you, but this week feels really long for me.
Yeah, this week has been 2 weeks already.
Yeah.
And it's just Thursday.
Yeah.
We're not even at the end yet.
Yeah, that's a great
but
phrase. I like
yeah. But yeah, no, it's been kind of I was here Monday, had to skip a couple days, and I'm back on the show. Yeah, and for anyone that's curious, just had a bit of a COVID scare and decided to hunker down and lock up until I could get all the tests done and feel that I was, So after multiple tests and coming back negative on all of them, it's like, okay, maybe we're fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're still in the midst of all that.
Yeah, one of the realities we're in today, right? We are in this festive season. People looking forward to relaxing, celebrating, hanging out with their friends, or maybe just not working. Those are all things that people like to look forward to, and food and presents and things like that. But sometimes, global pandemic inserts itself at the most inconvenient time.
Of course, it wouldn't do it at a convenient one because our lives aren't built around that anymore.
I know.
Like, every moment is precious, and we're all trying to get things done, and so it's
yeah. The reality is if it happened at most times, it would be like, well, this is the most important time. Why did it happen now?
What's funny is it's like my dad. I was talking to him on the phone about it, and he was like, "Well, I had COVID last year during Christmas. I don't want Christmas ruined by COVID again." And we're joking around about it being the perfect time to get COVID because you don't have to work. But it's the absolute wrong time to get COVID because you can't skip any work.
Right.
You just have to stay at home sick.
It's like that 1-2 punch,
Yeah, but sort of like, I guess I saw some sort of meme the other day, and it's kind of stuck with me. But it had like Neo stopping all the bullets from the Matrix, and it was something about people who have not yet been infected by any COVID variant or anything else, or COVID itself. And I was like, that's me. Like, I'm one of the few people left.
Yeah.
It's like, I think there's 15 of us left. That
Yeah,
haven't been infected by something.
The last of the Mohicans.
Yeah.
I honestly, as soon as I said that, I'm like, I don't remember that movie well enough to know if I should reference that there, but we'll find out.
No,
we'll
it's just the title is all that really matters for that. And
yes.
I think Daniel Day-Lewis was in that movie.
Maybe.
Back in a long time ago, back when he was really young and he wasn't after like really interesting roles. He was just, good looking.
Is that how your career's gone too? You started out.
I was just good looking, and now it's like on a downward slide. I'm like, I better do something interesting and artsy.
Yeah, that's funny. Like an actor who's like, well, I guess I'll take this gig now. I mean, I'm still working after all these years. That's impressive, right?
It is, right? Like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah.
So speaking of marathons, COVID, right?
Yes.
So that's we talked a little bit about that on the show yesterday. We had our lovely guest Alexandra on, and Danielle. It makes sense. I was like, why is Danielle a little lower today? And it's because she had fallen into your butt pit. her butt was a little
My
too small
butt.
to fit inside of your butt impression. It all makes sense now.
Y'all don't get to see it on the show, but I've got a very amazing butt that just
Yeah,
like crushes this couch.
You guys are really
You're
missing
missing
out.
I'm sorry.
So she sat in Ryder's butt pit, and then we had Alexandra on, who fortunately had a butt pit of her own. She was remote, and she told us a little bit about COVID. We talked a little bit through kind of what the numbers look like, and one of the things we looked at was, what does it mean to be one step removed, right? And so for the example, we said we had person A, B, and C. Person A, I think we called Ashley. B was, I don't know, we're mess up all the names. Brett and Charlie. I got Charlie right. The other ones are wrong, I think. But Ashley, let's say we know she has COVID, and Brett is exposed to her. Well, then Charlie's exposed to Brett. Realistically speaking, how does the math work out, and what are percentages work, and how do you multiply percentages? Because it can get kind of confusing sometimes, and even though sometimes it's simple math, you're dealing with decimal places and things like that, it can get easy to mess up. And even though I'm an electrical engineer, she's a data analyst, we both were like, let's pull up a calculator just to make sure we don't mess this one up.
Oh yeah. No, I'm the decimal moving is what really, and when you go into percentages and you're like, well, I know that's just 2 decimal places, but somehow it still gets screwed up.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, there's 128%. No, there's not. There's not. That
There's a 60% chance that it happens.
Every time.
Exactly. And so yesterday we talked a little bit about that, and we walked through some of the math, and I did some of my lovely drawing, which people had to, live through. And then we also talked a little bit about just how to deal with it and how to have a more nuanced conversation without just yelling at each other, and pointing out the fact that, look, Alexandra, she literally has a background in infectious diseases, and she's standing here telling us, like, it's a very complicated and nuanced topic, and it's not an easy answer. And so just going into the conversation with your family members or your friends, and come from that point where say, hey, let's recognize that this is a very complicated thing. Neither of us probably has all the information right now, and also neither of us probably really know the best things. And so let's listen to what you've heard and what you think, and you can listen to what I've heard and what I think. And by the way, we can both leave thinking different things, but maybe by talking a little bit, we'll shift each other's thoughts and opinions a little bit. And if not, at least I've exposed myself. Dang it. Wrong choice of words.
Go. Nice.
Man.
There's only a matter of time. At every family gathering.
but then you've exposed yourself to different thoughts, right? You can see, okay, now at the very least I can understand where they're coming from. I see what their thought process is, and because that's the thing that we also mentioned yesterday. It's so easy with COVID to get to that caveman brain because it's threatening your health, your safety. And so immediately you go to that fight or flight response, and you get defensive or you get offensive, and you start attacking the person, and you're like, how did you do that? What were you thinking? Why did you do these things? Like,
Yeah, and that's pretty much, that's how they all devolve.
Yeah.
Which is kind of also interesting to think about, right? Because it's just like, at what point does that devolving and screaming help? And it pretty much doesn't ever, and that's kind of, I mean, it is the going back to that almost childhood as well, right? Like, people don't understand me. I'm throwing a tantrum. I just listened to this podcast that was about child behavior. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, I still think that's pretty accurate. Like, most of us just, like, when we get frustrated and we throw a tantrum, and then it was actually saying the kids throw a tantrum so that they can get the relief-seeking behavior afterwards. So they go through anger, but there's still this, like, and you think it's because they're angry, but the anger is actually being acted out from some sort of desire for being comforted. So they really aren't that angry. They just want to be comforted, and the tantrum is part of a cycle to get you to comfort them. So I found that to be kind of an interesting idea. And if you applied that to, like, arguments we have as grown-ups, we actually just want to be comforted.
Yeah, well, that leads to, one of my core hypotheses or beliefs or whatever you want to say for that I've kind of picked up over the last few years, which is that if all adults just recognize that we are really just children with a couple of thin layers on top, then we would all be so much better off. Like,
wouldn't we?
Like, we all think like we're so much better than children, but we're really not. And
we just have more layers of bull crap.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, and also, all right, now containing and hiding and doing all of these things and keeping them to ourselves, thinking that it's going to be a better thing. But reality is, it usually makes things a bunch worse.
Yeah, so like that's kind of because where do we get to the point where we start learning to like contain and hide and like and all these kind of things? Because if we were just sort of open and honest and that was from the get go, then I don't know.
My guess is 7 years old.
7 years?
Yeah.
I that's a good age. I like that one.
Yeah. I think that's roughly where it goes from, all right, you're a kid, think of anything, dream of anything, be whatever you want, have imaginary friends to, all right, you should be reading by now. And why aren't we having full-on conversations and all these types of things, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that homework makes you upset. Well, guess what? You got to do it because life sucks, buddy.
Yeah. When do we get indoctrinated into the
when does the cynicism come in? Yeah. Like, yeah, well, you know what? I didn't want to have you as a child, and I've got you now, so you got to deal with it.
My life is ruined now, too, because of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's
I think
around 7.
Yeah.
7's when that conversation has to happen. Yeah. Otherwise, your parents will repress that conversation, and they won't be honest, and they'll hide these things from you. And they need to get it out in the open.
Yeah. So that was the thing that we talked about yesterday when we were talking about COVID and stuff like that. And some of that was just pointing out, like, hey, make sure to have those conversations with people. And also, one of the biggest things that she pointed out that I liked a lot was recognize that as a human going through life, every day you are exposing yourself to risk. And some of that risk is that you're going to die. Some of it's you're going to get hurt. Some of it's just, risk that something will happen, right? And so what Alexandra is pointing out is like, regardless of COVID, before that was happened and after it happens, every day you're going and you're doing quote unquote risky activities. Now, what the percentage of risk is maybe lower than it is with COVID, but the other thing she pointed out was with things like COVID, it's like a cumulative risk. Yeah. And so she pointed to this one website, which I believe is called microcovid.org. And yes, that is correct, microcovid.org. And it talked about, hey, think about what your budget is for how many, I think they call them micro-COVIDs. How many micro-COVIDs are you allotting yourself in a week? And so you can basically plan your exposure. And so you can say, all right, I normally don't do this, but there's a holiday party that I either want to go to or I don't really want to go to, but I'm being pressured to go to either one of those things, right? And then it's like, okay, that's going to be, I'm making up numbers here, 50 micro-COVIDs. Well, my allocation for the week is only 55. So now I'm going to have to come down with my other things like, okay, I was going to go to the movie, I was going to go to the store, whatever. You just balance, I was going to see grandma, like, okay, now I just need to make sure my micro-COVIDs are being lower, right? And it's a little bit of oversimplification, but it's also kind of helps with the mental shift of like, all right, I recognize that I am going out there and accumulating this risk over time, and I'm just accepting that fact. Because I feel like one of the divides that people fall into these days is I'm on team, hey, COVID is a pandemic. I'm taking this seriously. Why the hell are you not taking this seriously? How dare you not get a vaccine? How dare you not wear a mask? How dare you come in here? Oh, you didn't get vaccinated. Now you're sick and you need me to take care of you. Oh my gosh. Blah, blah, blah. Right. So that's kind of like one side that people kind of fall into and, get kind of angry and defensive. And again, talking about going towards that caveman brain and that fight or flight, that kind of response type of thing. And the other side is, hey, regardless of whether or not I think COVID is a real thing, like, I don't think it's as big of a deal as you do. I'm not going to wear my mask because you can't force me to. I'm not going to get a vaccine. Maybe I have legitimate reasons medically or otherwise, or maybe I'm just not comfortable with it. Again, I'm going off the cuff here, so I'm not necessarily giving both sides complete justice, but there's this definite split between those two things. And so part of what we're trying to encourage is like, hey, it doesn't have to be that divided, that much of a split. Let's have a conversation. Let's get to the next level below that to find out, all right, hey, I see that you're not getting vaccinated. Like, just let's talk through, like, what are your goals? Like, why are you not getting that? And like, what are you trying to do? Right? Are you trying to maximize, your health? Are you trying to maximize your time that you're spending with people because you recognize that that's very important to you? Like, what is your kind of goal? And then what are the risks that you're willing to accept to get to that goal?
Yeah, I like this kind of the metric, the micro COVID thing. I heard somebody talking about having a bucket of risk, and that was early on. And he was saying that his family, they just had a bucket, and they're just like, okay, well, you only get X amount every week, and it was just kind of a nice way to say, well, I think what happens is we often just feel that we need to do something, and then we go do it,
Hmm.
and so having some sort of external framework can really help.
Yeah,
So
and
that's kind
even
of
though
part
it
one.
seems like, I don't know, flippant or silly or simple, but yeah, having a physical or digital reminder where you have to stop and approve something,
Yeah.
it triggers that, and it I don't know if this is true or not, but thinking fast and slow, it might help you switch from that just fast, quick brain to the slower, more logical brain. I don't know if you
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
with
and
that
you
or
can
not.
also kind of think of the elephant and the rider, right? That's that sort of scenario that the elephant is sort of your emotional subconscious that's moving you around, and then we have our little rational part on top that that's it. Hey, hey guys.
Is that what your
So
writer sounds
that's
like?
that. It's slower and actually dumber. Like, it's so yeah, but I think that's another way to kind of think about it is that you have these emotions driving you, and sometimes the rational part of you is pretending to just go along with it, but having some sort of chart in front of you where you can actually point out where that risk is coming in, it's kind of vital for going like, oh right, I have forgotten that I have already done X, Y, and Z this week.
Right.
Because your brain will just override you, and there'll be a blind spot and you'll forget about it because you're now desiring something new. So the way our brains work is so much around desire and want, and we just override all of our rationalizations. So having these visual reminders, I think, is key.
Yeah, and it's also worth pointing out, willpower, as we've
Yeah.
talked about on previous episodes, is not as real of a thing as people like to think. Again, kind of going back to the analogy of the that fact that adults are just children with thin layers on the outside. Well, one of those layers that we think we get is willpower. In reality, that's not a very strong layer.
Discipline,
Right.
grit, gumption. There's all these things that, like, yeah, you're supposed to somehow show up at some point with all these things. And these are the traits of a grown up, a responsible citizen, a responsible adult. You're supposed to control yourself. It's all these kind of things. So I think some of that gets baked into the arguments about COVID is that so much of what I've heard on the is the control yourself side. Why can't you just control yourself? Like, this is a pandemic, people are dying, just control yourself. And other people are like, I'm losing my mind.
Right.
Like, I need to get out, I need to see people, like, I'm a social creature. And we start watching that sort of emotional drives bubble up to the surface, and there's a mental health aspect there as well. So I don't know where it lands. I wish that people could be, more cautious about things, because we have a bunch of people who just threw caution to the wind and then claimed mental health. And it's like, yeah, but now we have physical health problems that are
Yeah.
jeopardized because of the mental health issues. And so there's this parallel between all those, and it's sticky. It's really messy.
It really is, and that was one of our big messages, right? It's very sticky, it's very messy. There's no clean answer, and we're going to talk about it some more on a future day as well, especially as more about the I'm not pronounce it right, the Omicron or Omicron, the Omicron variant, as that comes up, and it's just worth pointing out for those of you who maybe this is the first time you're hearing this, there are people who are vaccinated and boosted who are still getting some cases, right? And they may not be the like full-fledged versions, but to be frank,
Oh, we know two people that have been vaxxed and boosted that ended up in the hospital
oh wow.
after catching this new variant. So all that to say, it can still be deadly.
Yeah.
It can still be very dangerous.
And I want to make sure to mention today, I don't know if we did yesterday, just a disclaimer that the show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We're telling you guys things that we've seen anecdotally and we've heard, but make sure you guys do the research yourself, because it's an important thing, right? So when the last couple things on COVID, where so we talked about a little bit about how to have that conversation, how to have that nuance, recognizing that it's messy and that people are gonna disagree, but also recognizing that you don't want to, it's up to you what you decide, right? But some people take the I'm going to completely shut down my life and never leave my room route. But we also were pointing out that you don't have to go that route. as long as you're being smart, you're planning, and you are taking those preventative steps. And one of the nice things about this microcovid.org website is it'll show you some percentages. And again, this is just meant to be like an estimate, right? But it'll show you like, oh, what does it look like when I'm with this many people? Mm-hmm. Oh, masks are worn. This is the percentage of chance that someone's sick. And you can kind of mess with the different situations, and it's giving you a bunch of different scenarios so you can see what that risk looks like. Because, and in my opinion, right, in my kind of take on COVID is like, all right, want people to be safe. If you're open to getting vaccinated, you should get vaccinated. I think there are a lot of people out there who aren't really strongly opposed, but they just haven't done it because they don't care that much. So if that's you and then you're in that camp, I'm of the opinion, go get it, but people may disagree with me on that, and that's perfectly fine. And then if you're not going to get a vaccine, then and I'm of the opinion, all right, make sure you're wearing a mask and you're keeping your distance. And then there's other things you can do, like hanging out outside, hanging out well-ventilated areas and things like that. So any other last thoughts on that before we move on?
I listened to a fairly lengthy podcast by Sam Harris, and he was interviewing a guy who just wrote a book on COVID, and the guy studies network effects and infectious diseases. So if you want one that it starts out as, he calls it a PSA, public service announcement for people about how COVID happens and why we're going to keep having these variants. And from the math that they throw out, there's really no excuse for not getting vaccinated. And that is the sort of point that they take. So if you're interested in hearing some really smart people talk about getting vaccinated, check out that podcast. Of course, if you've already made up your mind that you're not getting vaccinated no matter what, well, then nothing will change your mind. So don't waste your time on that podcast.
No, I'll give that a caveat, though, which is just because you've decided you're not going to get it, one, you can't always change your mind, but two, at least then you can understand some of why that's going on.
Yeah,
right?
like we're always talking about reaching out to other sides, but I think one of the things is just not making up your mind firm on some of these things, letting the facts that come out change your mind, letting new information actually shift your viewpoint. So if you're interested in new information, listen to that. If you're going to just get worked up about COVID by listening to it, maybe take it in small doses. It's a pretty nice podcast where they go through why we're going to keep having these variants, and then they even go into the moral responsibility of the nation to maybe vaccinate the entire world. Because if we don't want more variants showing up, the only way to do that is to stop it from incubating inside of people and animals.
Yeah, and that was another aspect we touched on a little bit, which is whether or not you like it. The way COVID works, the way infectious disease works is, yes, you are making that decision for yourself, but you also need to recognize you're not making that decision in a vacuum, or you are making it around whatever communities you may be involved in, family, friends, work. If you're on public transit or you're going out in public, you are affecting those around you, which makes the decision a little bit more different because you're not making it just for yourself. So that was another thing that we talked about, which it sounds like they probably talked a little bit about on here too. Was this the one with Nicholas Christakis came out December 14th?
I was going to butcher his last name. That's why I didn't even try to say it. But yeah, it's a pretty good one. It's like I said, it's lengthy because they start jumping into it and really going off on different kinds of details about COVID and how it spreads and the numbers and this, that. And so, and of course these guys are, Sam Harris is I guess, neuroscientist or something like that, and the other guy's a professor that does a whole lot of work in these regions. So, yeah, take a look if you get a chance.
Yeah, so I put both of those in the chat, microcovid.org and the Sam Harris podcast, episode 270, What Have We Learned from the Pandemic? A conversation with Nicholas Christakis. And so that's enough COVID for today. I think.
Yeah, that's
I think
enough.
We've had our dose, our exposure. So let's move over to, just since you missed Tuesday, I'll tell you what happened on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we had Libby, who on Monday with her we had the first half of our wham discussion.
Whammy.
Yes, we had the WHAM,
Nice.
Which was wholesomeness, hospitality, art, and munchies, and we were only able to get through the part of it, which is the W and the H.
Yeah.
And then so we're gonna have her later on, probably as a remote guest, so we can go through the art and the munchies because we want to definitely have that conversation with her. So on Tuesday we were like, man, munchies, I'm kind of hungry, so we ended up making actually from scratch a homemade rustic pear tart.
Ooh, scratch.
Oh,
Where did you
yes.
get your scratch?
Oh, we get our scratch in all the right places.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, yes, we do. And then we also made from scratch some homemade Irish cream. So for those of you at home who've ever had Bailey's, we made that, but at home. And we also made a Kentucky cream, which we just called Irish cream, but we made it with bourbon because, why not?
Yeah, of course. You have to.
Yeah.
If you've already got everything mixed up, you need to start sampling with the alcohols.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
That's,
Exactly. So
Yeah.
with that,
I've had some good evenings doing that.
Yes, we did. Let's go ahead and hop to the intro, and then we'll get to the rest of the show. Helpful for life. Welcome back to What the Hell is Water. I'm Reid Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
This is Ryder Richards, the deep butt pit guy
The
over
deep
here.
butt pit guy. I also wanted to give you your close-up for today. And I would point out that we made you a little sponge after you said that you were like a sponge. So we got a sponge with some googly eyes. And, we almost had him in right with the mic, but he wasn't very talkative. So it was like, this definitely isn't Ryder.
I'll do this. Hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Ryder the Sponge.
Hanky the Christmas sponge.
Hanky the Christmas sponge. Yes, cleaning up messes around the world. Yeah, that was, for those who are like, why is he a sponge? I think it was on Monday you said how some people told you, like, oh, you're like a sponge.
Yeah, I've had 2 unrelated conversations in the last month where people have called me a sponge. And I'm just like, that's weird. Okay, like I'm absorbent, I guess. Like maybe slightly moist. I don't know.
Slightly moist, which is a word people really like. So let's just say the word moist about 10 times.
Moist. Oh, moist. So moist and
moist. Oh, damn. I don't know which one's better. Damp's also pretty good.
Bad.
Yeah.
I mean, good as well. Like for making people grossed out.
Moist. Well, the trick is you got to be like really.
It sounds like spiders crawling.
Oh man, so let's start off with just a little bit of a speed round here, and we'll just keep it real surface level, and let's just see what's on your mind, Ryder.
Oh, I installed a vacuum.
Cool. Next.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I fixed our
no, was
vacuum
this
at the house.
Was this the big dust collector?
This is the big one.
Oh,
This is the
nice.
big
I'm
dust
glad it came
collector.
in.
Yeah, it came in early, so I got to install that sucker. That was
Nice.
interesting
Well
because
done.
I think the manufacturer actually, there's one piece that was like welded on at a 45-degree rotation where it's supposed to be, and it made everything a little trickier. And instead of sending it back, I just worked around it. So
You didn't like undo the weld and then
No,
re-weld
can you believe it?
I know.
I
I was
did-
like, classic Ryder. He's gonna be there. He's gonna do all the welding, and then he's gonna look in the box. There's like another piece or another note.
Oops.
Yeah.
No, so got that sucker installed. It took longer than necessary because I had to like actually drill some of my own holes to get things squared up, and then I had to plug the other holes because of course it is a vacuum, so you can't just leave them open. And there's all these weird little things. So that was fun. I actually found it to be fun. I was like, I troubleshot this. I solved it. And so I felt pretty good about that. Then made some emergency woodworking furniture.
Oh.
Yeah, like we have a glass table that broke on one of our tables, so we've just been using a floppy sheet of like 1/2-inch MDF on there. So anyway, I braced that up, made it into a real table.
Oh wait, so now you have a stiff MDF.
Stiff MDF table. Yeah,
Nice. That's stylish.
Yeah, it's a stiff wood table.
Good.
And then I made like a little mantle for the Christmas place where we can hang the stockings without having to put sticky 3M tacks on the mantle to rip the paint off. So I made like a faux mantle that we can like clamp onto there.
A Fantle.
A fantle. I made a
Nice.
fantle.
You need to put some Fanta in the stockings now
Oh,
to go with the Fantle.
well, because there's nothing. I spent all my time making this stuff. There's nothing in the
Yeah.
stockings.
The stockings are
I'm
empty.
gonna have to now do emergency Christmas shopping.
Just put some coal. Make sure it dangles low enough to where it's close to the fire. See if you
what
can.
could go wrong?
Yeah, see if you can get that
that's
Fantle lit.
perfect. I should just put some wood shavings in there as well. Just
The
see
roof. The roof. The roof is on
what-
fire.
The fantle. So yeah,
That will lead to additional necessary emergency woodworking.
yeah, so much more. This
Yeah.
is great. This is a never-ending cycle.
I like it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was messing with yesterday and felt pretty good about that. Like it's always fun to be hit like a little challenge and just like
power
I
through
got
it.
this.
Yeah. That was one thing, especially when I was doing a lot more of it, but programming, like this is neat. That's how I program.
Like I know, like Beethoven.
Yeah, when you're sitting there and you're just like, oh, I want this thing work, grr, and then you're like, oh, miss a semicolon. And the kids these days, let me tell you, they've got it easy. They just like kind of go blah 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 blah, and it like auto completes the code. And it's like there's no syntax error because they are automatically fixed by the AI. And it's like, what? You don't even need the type code anymore. You just click and drag some shapes. It's like back in my day. I heard about people who had to do punch cards.
Yeah.
I never had to do them, but
and you know what's really fun too is when you do the click and drag thing, then everyone goes, "Well, that's not clean code. That's not clean code, right?" And there's always like a caveat by the guys that are still writing in Latin.
And it's like, oh, okay, you want to pay me $80 to $200 an hour to make that clean code for you?
I can do that.
I think it's clean enough.
Yeah, it's fine now.
It's fine. Yeah. Why are you in such a tight wad? You need to release that every now and then. So what else is on your mind? We got emergency woodworking.
Yeah. So we got the vacuum. We got the emergency woodworking.
Did you intentionally make some dust to see if it sucked?
I did.
How did it go?
Yeah, the dust making was fun too.
Did you do that before or after you installed?
I already had some dust on hand because I'm a professional.
Oh, good.
I like to save piles of dust.
But I'm just curious if it's like, you go, you get it all installed, you do the extra drill holing filling, and you plug it in, and it's like, or just like, really, really, really quiet, and like, dang it. But no, it was full power then.
No, it was very sucky. Yeah,
Good.
it was.
Is it loud?
It's a little loud. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you have some noise isolating headphones.
I do.
Which we actually talked about on an earlier episode. So if you guys haven't seen that, I think that was it a Gar? I think that was a Gar. It was like, Gar!
Go ask Ryder and Reid.
Go. Oh, that was actually pretty good.
Thanks.
I like that.
On occasion it slips out.
So okay. Any other last things that should kind of shake out of the ear?
No, I mean there's other stuff that I'm sure we can rattle out.
Okay, well let me try something a little different here for you, Ryder. I want you to tell me a story in that accent you just did. Whatever story pops to mind.
Gar, I walked the plank and died. I don't know.
That was a pretty good story.
That was a really good short story.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm thinking about going into
They had the
fiction.
beginning, the middle, and the end. It was great.
Thanks.
Yes.
That's all you really needed, a story.
The
rest of these stories are so long.
Well, one thing you need to add is the denouement. You heard of the denouement?
I do not know.
Oh, so there's the beginning, right, and then the middle, and then the end, and so in there you have a rising action where things start to build, and then like a dubstep song, you have the drop. It's just.
I slowly walked the plank.
Yeah, and then after the drop, you have kind of that after bit where it's like, oh, maybe you're wrapping up some holes, maybe you're, yeah, exactly. Can I get that one more time?
So that's
there's
so I slowly walked the plank, and then I.
Yeah,
and then I died.
And then you died.
Okay,
yeah, and then maybe after you died, it's like. And then all of the onlookers cheered in joy because they were finally rid of him.
Yes, and the piranhas fed.
And the piranhas fed, indeed. I like that. I like that a lot. So, holiday season coming up. What are some things that you either look forward to or dread? Let's start with the dread.
Dread? Family coordinating.
Yes.
I dread that.
Just the logistics part of it.
Yeah, the logistics. Once I'm there, everything's cool, but getting it all worked out and navigating everybody is always a problem.
I think if this is not a thing, some of you smart, industrious people out there, make this a thing. Create a service where it's just family coordinating, and it's just you are the one point person, and you highly leverage technology and AI and things like that. And you say, all right, people, give me your schedules, and everyone gives you your schedules, and you spit out all the options, and then people can go, they can click and say, oh, here's where the overlap is, and here's what you do, and if you need to shift it or whatever, here's the ways you can shift it. And then, oh man, how many billions of lives would be made better by
Billions. Yes, the whole world would be. It would actually feel like Christmas then because people wouldn't be angry.
No, it wouldn't feel like Christmas. I
don't
know. Anger.
Right.
Some might argue anger is
the
part
key
of the
point
Christmas.
of
Yes,
yes,
exactly. So, what is something that you look forward to about the holidays?
Let's see.
Short list.
Yeah, no, vacation.
Yeah,
like the downtime. Yeah, the downtime is great. Doing things like sitting around for an entire day with my in-laws or something, just watching television and reading books.
Yeah,
like that's something that it feels like going back to like summer in college.
Okay.
Like where I just would like go mow lawns for half the day and then just sit around by the pool reading books. Because we're in Texas, it's gonna be like 80 degrees.
Right.
So it's gonna be awesome.
Right.
So those are the kind of things I look forward to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, for me, we have we like hanging out on the back patio. My parents have a very lovely back patio, and when I'm still in my I don't want to own a house phase, and maybe I'll come out of it. It just probably depends on how much money I end up making, where I have to think hard about whether or not I want one.
Yeah.
But when I see my parents' house, I'm like, oh, look at all that upkeep and all that square footage you got to heat and you got to cool and you got to pool, you got to maintain all these things. Oh, the roof, it hails all the time in Texas. Oh my goodness. And so it's like, man, but when I go and visit, I'm like, hey, it's a pretty nice house. It's nice. You have your own nice little backyard here and you've got some nice trees over there. And the other day, they sent me a picture when I wasn't there. They're just trying to inspire the FOMO, like, hey, get over here. And it had like my sister put Christmas lights around the fence, which I think was a first for us, or at least it's been a while. And then there's a really big, cool tree in the backyard, and parents have put an uplight on it, and says that. And then there's the pool, which was lit as well, and it was like all the lights and the color and the trees, and I think they use the long exposure mode on the phone.
Oh yeah,
and it was like, oh,
those
that looks
shots
pretty cool.
look lovely, don't
Yeah,
they?
it was
Like,
really nice.
Whatever happens with the new iPhone with the night shots is like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, for
They're
those of you who
beautiful.
aren't aware, like I don't know which ones,
HDR,
but
kind of
no,
like-
it's not HDR. It is called I think it might be called night mode actually.
Oh, okay.
But maybe an iPhone 11 or 12 or newer. So I don't know where the cutoff
it might
is.
be around the 11. I think that's what I got. I got the one with the three
Eyes
eyeballs.
looking at you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of.
I like it. But with I think it's 11 or newer, look up iPhone night mode, you'll find it out. And I think Android probably has a similar thing, but basically what it does is it instead of just taking a picture like that, it actually, the way a picture works real quick is there's a opening and it opens and it exposes a sensor to light. And the problem with night shots is there's not that much light going on, so your phone's not getting that much data. So what the phone does is it leaves that open for longer, so it allows more light to come in, so you can see more of the picture, which is really cool, especially when it's low light, and it makes it look a really cool effect. The only thing to note is while you're doing that, you need to either be very still or put it on a tripod, because as you're moving around, like the phone will compensate for some of that, but if you're moving around a lot and if you got like Parkinson's or something like that, it probably won't work because it's just
or you're in withdrawals because it's
yeah,
Christmas and
when
you're
you don't
trying
have
not
your
to
fix,
drink around
you
your
don't
family.
have your
Yeah.
fix. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to drink around your family, so you just switch to nicotine gum.
Yeah,
You
just still all twitchy anyway.
So yeah, the back porch for me, and my brother is a little bit of a pyro, so typically he'll burn, like, you know how big a cord of wood is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he'll probably burn about a cord of wood in a bonfire, and just like over time, and just like has a bonfire is a strong word. It's a fire pit. Yeah. But
I think they actually have regulations on the size of fire pits in the city, which
I don't doubt it.
Which is interesting to think about, because of course I wanted one that was like,
Massive,
6 feet across.
Yeah.
Like for bonfires, and they were like, yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, and that I'm not gonna encourage our viewers.
So yeah, we'll move on. But yeah,
Yes.
so your parents sent you this lovely photo. Of
Yes,
the
yes,
backyard.
yeah, the backyard, and I was just talking about things that I like about Christmas, and food is definitely involved in them. And fortunately for my family, food is a very big deal, and we always eat very well, and it's we all like to cook too, which is great. And so that's one of the things I look forward to with the holidays. For me, things I dread, probably coordination as well, especially a blessing mostly, but sometimes annoying. Having both my parents and Danielle's parents in town leads to extra coordination and trying to, let's go over here for part of the day, then drive over there. And then there's something about, again, hashtag great problem to have, first world problems, all those types of things. But it's like you're not like fully settled because I got to get in a car and go somewhere, and I can't drink because, all those types of small things. So there's a little friction there sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's when the families start getting split as well, it gets trickier and trickier, splitting time with mom and dad, and your in-laws.
And then the friend who came into town and all that.
Yeah. And then what tends to happen too is that since there's been more and more split families and divorces over the last 30, 40 years, whatever, then it's kind of like
the splits keep splitting,
spreading out. Yeah, and so all of a sudden, what was going to be 18 people coming over turns into 31, and then there's not enough tables, and and you start getting involved in all. And those are not bad problems. Those are actually kind of fun because most people show up and they get to hang out, and it's great. But yeah, there's that other side of always needing to sort of jump around, make sure you spend equal time with everybody, and then that's impossible. It's impossible to spend equal time and have everyone feel like it's equal time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like setting yourself up for disaster. Like if there's a recipe in there,
Right.
It's like letting everyone get 2 hours is just not enough. And so hopping around and spending a lot of time in the car turns into the new kind of Christmas vacation. And so, it's just kind of, once again, it's a kind of a sticky, messy kind of situation. So one of the things that we've started doing is just, we only do one holiday now with the family. We do either Thanksgiving or Christmas, and we alternate them every year. And then the other one, we just stay at home.
Yeah.
And just kind of like, if y'all want, you can come see us. Like we have done the thing where we got the house, so we've got a space for you to stay. Come out if you want. If you don't, it's okay.
Yeah, no, that's good, and that's something too. Danielle and I've been talking about. It's like, all right, so typically when we lived in LA, what we would do is we would fly in sometime around now, the Wednesday before or something like that, and we would stay for 2 weeks or something like that till right after New Year's. And so we were visiting, right? So we would be staying with our parents, and we would be hanging out, doing the family thing like that. But now that we live here, we're actually like, well, maybe we should do something on our own for New Year's. Maybe let's try and make a new tradition. Maybe we'll try something else where it's like, hey, you've been doing that for a while. Try something new. See what it's like. And, maybe you decide to run with it. Maybe you decide, nah, I'm going to go back to the other thing. But we're like, I think that might be what we try out this year just to do something a little bit different, get a little different vibe.
Yeah, why not? I mean, and you can try it out. And if it doesn't work,
yeah. Exactly.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's also sort of interesting coming out of a sort of a pandemic where everyone's plans have been disrupted anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also in a time period where like gas prices are high and you've got all these other kind of things going on. And it's kind of like, what happens if you don't do the thing that you think you're supposed to do? Like if you think you're supposed to go see your family and you're supposed to go travel and you're supposed to spend all this money, what if you don't?
Yeah.
Like what would be the downside of that?
I like the idea of questioning your supposed tos.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you may still do all of them, but
right. But at least question, think about it, and then maybe you'll even if it's like, grumble, I don't like going to see the family all the time, and I don't have to do this and the stress and all that kind of stuff, and then you like think about it and you're like, well, why do I do that? And frankly, is it worth it? Yeah. And then maybe you'll decide, okay, yeah, you know what, it is worth it. And maybe that'll help you reduce your grumble and make that stress a little cleaner. Or maybe you're like, actually, no, it's not worth it. Or maybe I'm going to try not doing it and see what it's like.
Yeah, and then maybe you absolutely hate it. And you're like, you know what? I grumble all the time about Christmas, but really Christmas is great and I actually do enjoy it. So,
yeah.
But I didn't know that until I tried to take a break from it.
And also, if you decide to do that, and especially if your family and friends are the type of people to guilt you over it, don't let that weaken your resolve. Just because everyone gives you all this crap doesn't necessarily mean you need to take it, right? That being said, like, that when people are in your life and they're coming from a good, loving, caring spot, you might want to listen to them and take their information in, but don't feel like, oh, they're all shaming me, so now I got to go back, right?
Yeah. It's just kind of, once again, this is just kind of using your life as an experiment, right? Like so much of our life is just that we set a track, we stay on it, and we just keep doing the same things on repeat. And then we even have the same complaints on repeat. And I find myself doing this all the time, generating the same, well, this is this and this and this. And I get really grumbly about something. And then I just have to remind myself that, like, I'm behaving like Eeyore, know?
Yeah. And another trick you can do is when you find yourself grumbling like that. So let's just say, like you were saying, like, oh, grumble, I don't want to go home for the holidays. Well, then you just picture Ryder and his sponge voice, and then you say that same thought in Ryder's sponge voice, which is, I don't want to go home for the holidays.
I don't want to go home for the holidays.
and then
why does the voice keep changing? What's wrong with you, Sponge?
He's a multicultural sponge. He gets around the block.
He's got so many voices.
And yes, and then you're like, okay, was that a valid thought? Did Spongy voice change the way I thought about it? No, no, just
No.
keep going.
No, it was good. You need to use a more authoritative voice, Spongy.
Yeah,
thing.
and if you're like, Spongy, what are you doing? You just dip him in some water, like, tell me the truth, Spongy. So movies. What you got? Any movies that are gonna come up over the next couple weeks? You're like, oh, now that I have a little time, I'm gonna maybe try and watch that.
Like the new Matrix, I want to see that.
Now that you're COVID blocking and just
Yeah,
dodging.
now that I'm Neo with COVID,
Yeah.
like
What
yeah.
is the new Matrix? I actually have not heard about it.
Oh, it's got Keanu Reeves and I can't remember the lady's name, but the original two protagonists.
Okay.
They're back in it, and it's kind of a reboot. It's almost like they reset the Matrix, and then they're rediscovering themselves again.
You know,
kind of going like, this feels familiar. I think I might have seen you before. It's that kind of thing.
Nice.
So yeah, and it's been 20 something years since the original Matrix.
Goodness.
So it's been a long time, and so to kind of like to reboot it now with the original actors, I'm down for that. Like, why not? Those movies. I saw, I think, that and Fight Club in the same year when they first came out, and was just like, both of those were such. Like, I was in college. It was kind of like paradigm shifting. You mix that up with some Radiohead, and that's basically who I am. It's like, take these three movies and a little of this and a little of that. Some Monty Python in there.
It reminds me of. Did you ever see Powderpuff Girls, the Cartoon Network cartoon?
No.
Yeah,
no.
it's these three girls who have superpowers, and they're called the Powderpuff Girls. And the intro is like sugar and spice and everything nice, and it's like the guy's like dumping them into a cauldron, and he like makes them. So yeah, so it's for you. It's Radiohead.
Yes, this is what, yeah, some Matrix, some Fight Club, throw it all in together, stir,
dash in some people pleasing.
Yeah, right. Some people pleasing, a lot of alcohol in college. Like, throw that in there.
Throw in a couple insecurities,
Yeah, just see what happens. Like, angsty artist comes out.
Yeah, and then DIY, why not? Just
yeah.
See what happens.
It's like, I'm useful.
Yeah, throw in a sponge.
Yeah, right.
Well, it actually, I'm glad we brought this up because it reminded me of yesterday. So our challenge from Friday, by the way, I believe it was Friday, was to watch a Disney movie, which I hadn't done. And by the way, I don't think we mentioned earlier, our challenge for yesterday was for you guys at home to have that conversation with somebody, whether it's a family member, a friend, or a coworker. Just be like, hey, like I've started to think about COVID a little bit a different way. I'm using this kind of micro exposure type of thing, and I'm thinking through what my goals are, like how important is it for me to get out and see things, see people, maybe go to events. And I wanted to talk with you about that and how you're thinking through that equation. And one of the things Alexandra pointed out was that may be the first time a lot of people have those thoughts and have that conversation. And I think now that we're 20 months into a pandemic, it might be a good time for us to start encouraging more of those conversations. So again, people can like analyze for themselves and figure out what it is they're going for, what they are trying to accomplish. And that way they can say, hey, I'm willing to accept these handful of risks in order to achieve that goal. And in pointing out, she also pointed out like, hey, you're driving in a car. That's a risk that you're taking, right? And there's all these risks. So, but anyways, the challenge I brought up was Friday, which was the Disney challenge. And so I hadn't watched a Disney movie yet. So last night we remedied that. Danielle and I watched the movie Soul together. Have you seen that before?
No, I have not. No.
I actually highly recommend it. I thought it was a very good movie. It's Jamie Foxx is it's animated. It's a Pixar movie. Jamie Foxx is the character, the narrator, or the voice, I guess, of the main character. And it's I'll avoid spoilers here, but it's basically a guy who is a band teacher wanting to be a jazz musician, and his he's in like his middle age, and he's still holding on to that dream of being a jazz musician. And the movie's called Soul, so it's about a little bit about purpose and figuring out like, oh, what is that? How do I get to that? Is it worth it? And am I going to find that fulfillment and all those types of things? And of course, some other characters get introduced that maybe going through some of that struggle of their own. And it looks into the mystical world of where souls come from, where do souls go, and it has these keepers of that realm and things like that. I'm touching very lightly because it's one of those things where I don't want to give away the twist from 15 minutes into the movie or whatever. Yeah. But it's an interesting movie, and I thought they did a good job. And also it involves jazz, which I like jazz, and a lot of people especially in this day and age, aren't really exposed to it. So I think it's a good thing to get exposed to that way. And of course, naturally, as a helpful for life guy, dealing with purpose and things like that kind of goes right up my alley. And then there's a "What the hell is water" reference within the movie as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
we were just sitting there
Yeah.
and it's like, did you just
Did you, what?
that? Yeah, exactly. So I'll let you guys find out where that is. But I recommend checking that movie out. And if you end up watching it, let me know. We can chat about it a little more, maybe with spoilers. But it's a cool movie. And I think Disney and Pixar. I haven't seen like the lineup of all the things they've done in the last 15 years, but I feel like they're on a pretty good roll.
Yeah, it seems like I don't know, animated movies in general. I think the budget for them is high, and they get really good writers on there, and they're like, man, seeing things like Wall-E a long time ago, I was just like, this is just better than anything else coming out right now.
Yeah, and I need to see Wall-E. I actually never saw that one.
Yeah, there's these, the way they write the stories and they involve things, and I was just sort of blown away when I saw that movie. And so on occasion, I'm a big fan of the animated stuff, but I'm also kind of a big fan of fiction in general.
Yeah.
As kind of a way to like open your world and think about different thoughts. So I've always been a big fan of it. But yeah, increasingly it's kind of like, if you're going to spend that kind of budget and time to animate a movie, you better have a good script.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get away doing a live action movie with, I think, a mediocre script, or like, I think of about half the shows Netflix is putting out lately that seem like it's like, this is not a great script, but you threw a lot of money at it.
Right.
And they're somehow getting away with it because I think they have the platform to push the shows.
Yeah, or the actors or
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, like the Red Notice being the one I'm thinking of. But like the last two with Ryan Reynolds that were on Netflix, I was just kind of like, these are not great. And sometimes I know there's a lot of good script writers out there. So what the heck is happening?
What's going on?
Yeah, but anyway, that's beside the point because they're probably just giving people what they want.
Yeah, that's also true. And that's part of that dynamic of, hey, what are people actually watching? And then it's like, hey, we know this is the better script. We know this is the better movie objectively, right?
Yeah.
As objective as art can be. But we know this one's better, but all these people keep clicking on this one, and that led to much more people subscribing. So we're going to put money over there. And it's like, on one hand, how can you blame them? On the other hand, I can blame them.
Yeah. No, it's a mixed bag. And we've talked about this before, that like sometimes you just have to do things to pay to get the money rolling in for various other projects you want to do. And so there's a trade-off. But yeah, we've also started watching Witcher. On there's a season 2 of Witcher that just came
that's
out.
the one. Okay, I was talking with Danielle, like, okay, we need to catch up on some stuff. I know, like, we were, just to say something we were watching Ozarks a while back, and we didn't quite finish. And like, okay, we need to go to that. We mentioned Big Mouth the other day. I think they came out with a new season of that. We was like, oh, we should go check some of those out. And then it's The Witcher. I knew they were coming out with a new season, but we haven't seen it yet, so I'm looking forward to that. Which also reminded me of the book Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. So for those of you at home who've not read that book, Elantris, Elantris, I'll drop a link in the chat here. But go ahead and pick that book up. We're going to talk about it. I think it's a really good book, and it's got a lot of good kind of teaching points, if you will, but it's don't take it as a book that teaches. It's a fiction book that you read for fun, that I'm going to extract meaning and point and use those characters as teaching tools, basically. And I regardless of the value from the actual teaching, I think the book by itself is just good and entertaining.
Yeah, no, I re-listened to it. I listened to the sort of updated version, or however many years, 10th, 15th anniversary.
Yeah, the 10th edition, yeah.
Yeah, re-listened to that because there's some extra stuff at the end that's kind of interesting. And Brandon Sanderson is a sci-fi writer who is developing like a cosmology, an entire world.
Cosmere,
is this the name of it?
That's what he calls it.
Yeah. So if you start getting into his books, you can just keep going deeper.
And it's so cool because you like read, he has these separate series, and they're all set within the same universe, but in different parts of it. And some, they're like, this is very clearly tied to these things, but in others, it's like Cosmere, I think, is his first major book release. And so it's like, hey, here's the introduction to this world, and but yet, I've read one or two of his other series. It's like, okay, I can see like a couple of the like loose ties, but it's not completely strongly tied yet. But this is also the first book in the series, so you kind of get to expose a little bit more and more, which I've found I've really enjoyed. There's a term called world building, and that's basically like, as the author, or if you're like in a video game or a movie, like as they are showing you what this world is like and what exists in it, how it works. And that's the nice thing about fantasy is they take like the real world stuff, just like human random things, and a lot of the fantasy ones, they introduce a little bit of magic sometimes, and in this case, it's not, in my opinion, like too heavy-handed. It's used here and there, and it's used occasionally to make some really interesting plot things, but it's not like in your face all the time.
No, there are normal people in these stories that don't have access to the magic, and not everyone has it, and they're all kind of moving through the world trying to figure out how to live. And also Sanderson does something where sometimes the magics are very small. Like you only have a little bit of power in this very tiny area, but then what happens in the world building is that little tiny change causes ripple effects, and they figure out how to multiply those effects over time to do different things. And so there's something nice about that, without having, like, it's not like everyone's a Superman that has laser eyes and X-ray vision and superhuman strength and it's really, you just have one tiny benefit, and then what does that extrapolate out into?
Yes, and then how does that interact with the regular quote unquote people who have no control at all, or maybe even knowledge of these types of things, and then how does this all affect the greater things? And there's also like political intrigue, and like, different parties and countries, and how are they playing together, and what's going to happen, and a little bit of peek behind of what is it like to try and have a kingdom or a country or something, and the factors you got to keep in mind as a leader. And it's like, hey, some of the trades, well, is it worth the death of one man to save a nation? Or is it okay for me to do this white lie because I recognize it's going to benefit the greater good, things like that. Another concept within that is there's this kind of lost soul type of thing where it's like, these people have gone there and now they've become a shell of themselves because they've lost sight of something, which has a very good parallel to the movie Soul. They have some things they literally call lost souls, which is another thing where it's like, I see how that can happen, and I see, now that I've seen that pictorial representation of that, maybe I can relate a little bit to that, or I know someone who's like that, and let's work on focusing on how we can maybe fix that, or some ideas and things like that. So that's why I like that book too.
And the book is good, and there's that it's good in a lot of ways to sort of showcase also people's ability to change, ability to grow. Talking about what the hell is water, then there's these kind of unquestioned assumptions that people hold that are actually detrimental to the entire society, because they've basically forgotten why certain things are happening. And we've talked before on this show about this idea of the simulacra, where you're living a superficial life and you've actually forgotten the original principle or purpose behind why you do things. So there's some of that shows up in his book as well, and it's just really kind of compelling. A lot of his books they're easy reads, they're really good. I think I originally stumbled across him when he finished out the Wheel of Time series for
Wheel of Time?
Which
not,
is
not because it sounds like you say Will, like William.
WHEEL.
All right, say it one more time
circular
for us.
Will. I'm gonna just keep saying it as if it's a name.
Okay, what's the there's that song, the Something Tell Overture. You ever heard of that one?
The William. The Will I Am. Yeah, I'm getting some grief over the southern thing going on here.
Yeah, I reckon so. Sorry to interrupt your wheel of progress.
My spiel.
Yeah.
Wheel.
Stewie from Family Guy likes to really emphasize. Cool whip.
Wheel.
Yeah, Wheel. The Wheel of Time series, you had just...
Which is on Amazon. Amazon Prime.
There's no H there. Where did the H come from?
Amazon. It's amazing.
So you got into Sanderson with his Wheel of Time series?
Wheel of Time, which is by now being a series that's being made on Amazon Prime. So if you're interested in fantasy, check that out. if you're actually interested in something that's a little more kind of fun, that's animated, we've been watching. It's called Agretsuko. It's a little cartoon on Netflix. It's about a little red panda who's an office worker, and it's just so dang cute.
Nice.
And there's a nice twist in there too, which is fun. And then one other one that we watched that we kind of enjoyed. I think it's Chinese, but it's called Scissor 7, and it's a kind of animated series about this assassin who's lost his memory and he now thinks he's a barber.
Oh,
And
nice.
so it's a kind of a fun one as well. So those are on Netflix if you're interested. But Will of Time is on Amazon Prime, so you check that out if you get a
Does
chance.
the barber end up meeting a cosmetologist and they fall in love that she also happens to be a deadly assassin and then they get married?
Not quite, but really close.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. I don't know if it was a sequel to Mr. and Mrs. Smith or not,
No, but I haven't seen that show in a long time.
So for those of you back at home, the reason we bring up some of these is because Soul, the Disney and Pixar movie, Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, those are a couple that we may talk about a little more in depth, either on the show or in a separate series. And then the other one, this is a nonfiction book, but if people are looking for some stuff to read, these are some things we're going to be discussing in the future. One of them is called Crucial Conversations, which we'll also include a link for. And we may end up actually doing kind of a larger series on that one because we think it's a really good tool of understanding. We were talking a little bit about COVID earlier, also when talking about politics or really any of these things where people are trying to figure out what someone else is thinking and having a conversation that may be a little tense, maybe that hard conversation to have, but it's an important one to have. It's a crucial conversation to have. And so it talks about that concept and say, hey, all right, when you're in this crucial conversation, here are some things that are going to happen. And here are some tendencies we have as these humans to do these things. And one of the things that we do in that is, or he point out in that is, I read and I'm always writing stories for people based on the information I have. Like, I know, Ryder said this, Ryder did this. I've seen these outward things from Ryder. Now I'm writing a story in my head as to why he has that and why he's doing those things. And one of the big things in the books is, guess what? That story is wrong a lot of the time. But the first step is recognizing that you are writing that story for somebody and then giving them the chance to, learn the actual story that they have, and sometimes it'll be the same. It doesn't discount that.
You're gonna guess right, but without the conversation, then it's just speculation,
right?
Or an assumption. And you know what they say about assumptions.
I don't.
I don't either. But
yeah, I assumed you did.
I think they say it about assume.
Oh, okay. So Crucial Conversations is a book by Carrie Patterson, Joseph Gurney, Al Switzler, and Ron McMillan, and they actually just came out with the 3rd edition like last week or 2 weeks ago or something like that. And so that is the one that I would recommend for everyone to pick up. We just picked that one up ourselves, and we'll be doing some things around that. So that is the last of my books and movie suggestions for today. Any other last ones before we move on?
I just finished a book called The World Beyond Your Head by Matthew Crawford. He's the same guy that wrote Shop Class as Soulcraft. It's really, if you're into any kind of sort of philosophy and identity, it's kind of like how to become an individual in the age of distraction is, I think, the sort of subtitle for that.
Nice.
And it's a good one. I really enjoyed it. But he'll go through and he basically just like takes down major philosophers like Kant. He's like, oh no, this is probably not accurate, and this is why he did this, but we've been living by this for hundreds of years now, and it's wrong. And it's really kind of lovely to just see somebody just go slap around some major philosophy.
Nice.
And you can disagree with it, but it's always fun to see. So
can I get that slap one more time? Nice. Well, real quick, because I think it will be fun, I'm going to give a little dramatic reading from Goodreads to describe this book.
Okay.
The World Beyond Your Head, on Becoming an Individual in an Age of Distraction, by Matthew P. Crawford. A groundbreaking new book from the best-selling author of Shop Class as Soulcraft. In his best-selling book, Shopcraft as Soulcraft, that's a mouthful, Matthew B. Crawford explored the ethical and practical importance of manual competence as expressed through mastery of our physical environment. In his brilliant follow-up, The World Beyond Your Head. Moist. Damn. Turn the screen off. This is going real
This is
well.
great. This is.
I'm sure the author's really glad
Yeah,
we're doing
he's like,
this.
thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for
real,
the plug.
Real good. In his brilliant follow-up, The World Beyond Your Head, Crawford investigates the challenge of mastering one's own mind. Dun, 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 dun. And I'll leave it at that. I shared the Goodreads link in the chat for you guys, but I think that's probably good enough for today. I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. So, any challenges that come to your mind from our lovely discussion? You know, we started off with a little bit of a recap of the last couple of days to catch Ryder and you guys up, and told y'all about our cooking stuff we did on Tuesday, which is still live, or not live, but still up there on YouTube. You guys can go watch. We made the rustic pear tart, which we'll be sharing some really nice pictures from. It was really good. It's, if not the first time, it's one of the first times I made like a pastry crust from scratch. It was actually surprisingly easy, and it tasted really good. It had a nice crisp to it. And then we made that homemade Irish cream and that homemade Kentucky cream. So our challenge from Tuesday, I think, was to go cream yourself. You know, go make sure that you make that, because it's delicious and it's a great holiday thing to share.
Yeah, share your cream during the
Yes,
holidays.
Share your cream during the holidays. But for today, so we got you caught up on that. We gave a little recap on COVID. You added a couple cents in there, maybe 1.5 to 3, somewhere in that range. And then today we bounced around about random things that we shook out of Ryder's head. And then we ended up talking about a couple of recommendations for movies and books now if people go into the holidays, because we mentioned one of our favorite things was to relax and hang out and maybe watch some movies, maybe read some books, spend some time with family. Maybe light a whole cord of wood on fire. Maybe light your fireplace on fire to make your emergency woodworking go up in flames.
That way you got something to do over the
That
new
way
year.
you have something to do.
Yeah.
Because Ryder said he really likes creating problems so he can fix them.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you think the problems are going to show up on their own, but just in case.
Just in case.
Sometimes
just
you can make
in
them.
case. So any challenges that popped into your head from today's conversation?
I was thinking a lot about, we're talking about all these different shows that are out there. I would be interested to see what people think that we should be watching or listening to. Because we consume information, we consume shows, maybe find a way to communicate with us via the chat or something else, what we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, and so you guys can comment on whatever platform you're watching right now. And for those who aren't aware, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we are on Facebook, and we are on Twitch right now. We go live on all of those channels every time we go live. So you can drop something in the comments there. Or probably the better way, if you can take the extra step, is to go to helpfulforlife.com and hit the Contact Us button in the top right. And write in. Tell us, what do you think we should be listening to? What do you think we've been watching or should be watching? And what should we be reading? We'd love to hear what you guys think, and may even share your suggestion with other people. You know, regardless of whether or not we read it, we might just share kind of what some suggestions people came up with. With that, you guys have, we are going to take tomorrow off for Christmas Eve. So we encourage all of you guys to, have a wonderful holidays, whether or not you celebrate Christmas, and, have a great weekend.
Yeah.
And with that, sayonara.